everyone. Welcome to tonight's program. My name is Grace Hayek, and on behalf of the Glencoe Public Library, I welcome you to tonight's webinar with horticulturist Dolly Foster, who joins us from Indiana and will share her knowledge about collecting and saving seeds from the garden. This program is presented in partnership with the Friends of the Green Bay Trail. Special thanks to Becky Maganuco for her work in helping to schedule this event and to Meredith Clement for helping get the word out. A little bit about Dolly now. She has been a master gardener for 23 years. She's a professional horticulturist who worked for 18 years in the parks and recreation industry. And she is now does consulting and education on gardening with a focus on pollinator gardens. And about 90% of the species that she raises herself are native species. She also has a very charming driveway gardening and nursery business that she runs. And it sounds like it's to the benefit of the entire community. So thank you very much, Dolly, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you for having me. I am very excited to be here tonight. So what we're going to talk about tonight is collecting and cleaning of seeds. And mostly what I collect in seeds is native plants and annual flowers and some perennials. So that's mostly what we're going to talk about tonight. You're going to learn how to collect and identify and clean seeds for about, I think I have 18 species of natives in here. And then the handouts that you're going to get are going to be really helpful for you to expand on that information. Now, I've been collecting seeds for a very long time, probably about 20 years. And when I started out, I would put my seeds into those little cups that African violets used to come in. And I think they still come in these little plastic colorful cups that usually match the flowers. And now I've gotten to the point where I am collecting seeds in like a paper grocery bag. And so I've gone from collecting just a few seeds that I need to collecting large amounts of seeds, which isn't even large compared to what other people collect. And I make my seeds available not only for my sales, for my plants that I sell, but I give seeds away to different organizations. I made a pretty sizable donation to the 5 seed libraries that just got started last spring here in Lake County, Indiana. And I'm going to try and make a bigger donation because we've added another seed library in Lake County, Indiana. So I try and get the seeds out there. And so a lot of people actually, I will come home and quite often, and there will just be a bag of seeds on my deck as I come home. So people know that I collect seeds, and so they bring me seeds too. So it's not just all my seeds. So why are we collecting seeds at all? Well, in the pure direction of flower gardening, we're going to collect seeds because growing plants from seeds is a really inexpensive way to get more seeds and to get some more plants. And then from there, get more seeds. Planting plants by seed that you collect preserves diversity. It improves diversity in our plants, and then it makes stronger plants. So the longer that we collect seeds from our own garden, put them back in the ground, they get stronger. If we keep collecting seeds from the strongest, most robust plants, then that is helping diversity also. And those plants are getting accustomed to our gardens and to our region. Trading with other gardeners is another great reason to collect seeds. It's a great way to get more new seeds, new varieties of seeds. And then I like to also collect seeds because it connects me with the area that I live in, the history around the area. I don't live in the dunes. I mean, I live kind of far from the dunes, but the whole Northwest Indiana area, conservation and love of the Northwest Indiana area is really focused on the dunes, the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore and the Indiana Dunes State Park. It's a very beautiful biodiverse region. If you've never been down to the Indiana Dunes, it's an incredible place to go visit, especially in spring. And so collecting native plants that grow in the dunes is really a great way to connect with history and to expand those plants out to your own garden from the dunes. And then it's also a really fun hobby, and it's potentially addicting. And I mean, I just switched over my dining room table from collecting caterpillars and raising monarch butterflies to my seed operation, and this table will be occupied with this until at least next April. So it's kind of a fun hobby, but it's really addicting. So one of the things that I want to point out to everybody, if you're not familiar with seeds at all, seeds and seed pods are extremely varied. And however, they are also very similar to plants in the same plant family. If you look at the top row, the fourth picture over, the one that looks like a starburst in there with the little black dots, that's an allium seed head. And seed heads from ornamental onions and regular onion plants and anything in the allium family for that matter, they are all going to be very similar looking. So if you see a seed head that looks a little bit like fireworks in your garden with the little black seed in the center, that's going to be something in an allium family. Now, if you don't remember what the flower looked like before it went to seed, then that's going to be a problem because you'll have to grow it out to try and figure it out, or wait until the next year until the plant blooms again. You can photograph it and ID it. All of the columbine seed heads look really similar. That's the top row, the second picture in from the left. Bean pods all look really similar. That's the third flip picture over. Sunflowers all look really similar. When you're looking at sunflowers, even sunflowers of different sizes, the seed heads all look the same. Poppies all look pretty much the same. So a plant family, the reason why we put plants into a plant family together is because their flowers are similar to each other, the manner in how their seeds are formed, and how they grow, where they grow, and then how they seed and what their seeds look like and how they function are all the reasons why a plant would be put into the aster family or the brassica family, nightshade family, rose family, so on and so forth. So let's talk briefly about hybrid plants. Hybrid plants, mostly when we're collecting seeds and we're talking about hybrids and saying, oh, don't collect any hybrids, it's usually with edible plants. And with edibles, you'll know that you have a hybrid plant if you look at the tag or your seed package. It will be clearly marked with an F1 notation next to the plant name or under the plant name. That F1 notation means that that hybrid is a first generation hybrid, and it means that that hybrid, in order to achieve that plant, the hybridization has to be done every single year. It's completely unstable. If you took a hybrid tomato or a hybrid pepper or a hybrid, I don't know what else, corn, if you take those and save the seeds from those hybrids and you put them into the garden next year, your plants will come out and the fruit will not be exactly the same. However, you will have the fruit of one of the parent plants. So the parents are usually put together and made into a hybrid because they both have very valuable aspects to them, whether they be shelf life or flavor or drought tolerance or disease resistance. Those are kind of the top four for edibles. So they don't produce the same fruit, so try to stay away from those if you want to collect your own vegetable seeds forevermore from here on out. Concentrate on heirloom varieties. And if I can think of the organization down in Missouri, I will let you know. Let me think on that in the back of my head for a minute. There's an organization that's been around since the 70s that I can't think of it, but I'll figure it out. I'll tell you before I finish. The same is not always for flowers. It's not always true for flowers. So seed packages don't always have the notation F1 hybrid. I would say that at least 80% of the zinnias that are on the market are F1 hybrids. So you are not going to get the same kind of zinnias when you collect your seeds every year. They won't look the same, but they'll be somewhere in similar shades. If you have a red zinnia, and it's a really gorgeous red zinnia. You will have a red zinnia next year. It just might not be exactly the same. Hybrid plants will appear with the variety name or the hybrid name in single quotes next to the species and the genus name. So the genus and species come first, and then the quotations around the variety name. And that's how you know that that plant has been hybridized or it was a variety that was found somewhere in nature. For seed collecting purposes for annuals and for perennials, look for anything on a package or a seed listing that says open pollinated, heritage heirloom, native or straight species, or nativars. So nativars are a little tricky. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with nativars. Nativars are native plants that have been selected from either nature or have been hybridized in some way. They are about one generation away from the straight species. They are usually chosen out of a gigantic field of seed selections. I don't know a whole lot else about them. I try and stay away from them. I have a few nativars, but there's a couple of good things about nativars, though, is that sometimes when they're chosen, they are chosen because they're a little bit smaller than the straight species. And iron butterfly, ironweed comes to mind. The 2 or 3 native species of ironweed are about 6 to 8 feet tall in a home garden. And iron butterfly is only about 2.5 feet tall, and it grows in a very, very a very predictable shape. It grows in a big ball, and it's blooming right now. If you see a big purple ball with really dark purple flowers, it's the nativar of ironweed, and it's called iron butterfly. So I think that for anyone who is just delving into native plants, I don't think it's bad to choose a nativar here or there so you can try out a plant. I think they are a good gateway to native plants. So if nativars introduce people to native plants and gets them curious enough to seek out the straight species and the original plants and go to native plant sales and things like that, I don't think they're necessarily bad. I think that you should definitely have straight species natives in a garden if your goal is pollinator gardening. And I don't think I mentioned it, but that is definitely my focus for my plant sales, my plant production, my education of other people, and sharing of seeds. It's all because the concentration is on pollinators and butterflies, hummingbirds, bees, all that. So that's my little soapbox about nativars. Don't be afraid of them. Just don't have a whole garden of them. All right, so let's talk about the importance of pollinators. Since most of the plants we're talking about tonight are going to be pollinator plants, pollination is a very, very important function in nature, and it's vitally important to our food system. And if you have ever seen the photograph of the Whole Foods when they took everything out of the produce section of the flagship store, they did this about 10 years ago, I think. They took everything out of the flagship store produce department that was pollinated. So that left a very, very empty produce section. And so it just kind of drives home the point that pollination and our food system are hand in hand. They're extremely important. We have to take care of pollinators, and it's not just honeybees. It is native pollinators also. Native pollinators pollinate our food plants better and more efficiently and quicker than honeybees. Not that honeybees are bad, not that honeybees are lazy, but honeybees are just a little different than our native bees. Our native bees are smaller, quicker, more efficient. Honeybees, I don't want to get into the politics of honeybee production and colony collapse and things like that, but it is important to pay attention to our native bees just as much as it is important to raise awareness about honeybees. Honeybees are livestock, basically. They're not a native species to this continent at all. All right, so without pollination, we would not have a lot of the food that we eat. It is every third bite of food that you eat is attributed to a pollinator. But without pollination, we also would not have flowers in nature. Some of our trees, berry plants that are wild, things like that. And those are all very important plants out in nature and in our gardens. So pollinator health depends on the quantity and the quality of the plants provided. And this is where natives come in. Natives are really going to be the best plants for your native pollinators because they are the ones that they have evolved with and that they are used to eating and they are accustomed to being around. So when you put those into your garden, you draw those native species in and you become a pollinator gardener. Plan for a healthy percentage of natives in your garden if you're planning to do a renovation or you're just starting out, something like that. And I think a good mixture to start with is about 60% native, 40% non-native. There are some pollinator plants that are okay, that I don't think are detrimental to the environment, and that pollinators really enjoy very much. The photograph on this slide is one of those. It's called globe thistle. And as long as you let the birds eat all the seeds and collect what's left over, then this plant is not going to go crazy in your garden. So keep those kind of things in mind, because not only do we want to grow natives in our garden to have the flowers feed our pollinators, but the seeds can feed a lot of different birds and keep those birds going over the winter season. So it's kind of important to have those, to leave some out there at least. Let's see. You can encourage native bees in your garden with nest boxes. I'm going to let you do that research on that. There are some hints and tips about doing it the best way possible. And then if you are still using pesticides in your garden, this is the year to really, really think about it. Why are you still doing it? There is nothing that an insect pest can do to your home garden that would give you the chance to say using a pesticide is the best way to do it. There are wonderful organic methods of gardening that where you can actually bring in the small parasitic insects that will beat out those bad insects, and that's really the way to go. And to do that, you want to start researching beneficial insects, beneficial predators. Otherwise, there's just, I don't know. I think that I know that I'm lecturing and we're not having a conversation here, but I do think it's a really important thing to think twice about pesticides anymore. There are instances in your life where you're going to run into a really big bad weed where you are going to have to use an herbicide. And if that's the case, then you got to do it. It's a tool in the toolbox. But I think pesticides, there's just no reason for it anymore. Especially not in a vegetable or a flower garden. Okay, so there are 5 steps to saving seeds and getting those seeds cleaned up and saved successfully. So we're going to go through each one of these. The first one is observation. Then we're going to talk about collecting, drying, cleaning, and storing. So observation, this is a biggie. So what you need to know about observing flowers is, in my experience of teaching people how to do this, that I have noticed that people don't really understand how plants actually flower and what it does to the plant when they flower. Sometimes it kills the plant when they flower if it's an annual. But it's really important to understand flowering in general. So let's go over this a little bit. So the same plant species generally bloom at the same time every year. And I say generally because climate change is kind of making some of our seasonal things that we have come to expect to be normal to get a little wonky. Plants are blooming at the wrong time of the year in some cases, blooming a little early, blooming a little too late. When that happens, it upsets the balance of the pollinators because those pollinators might come out in the second week of June expecting one of their food plants to be there. And if it doesn't bloom until the 4th week of June, those little bees or pollinators or whatever they are, they might be gone by then. So that kind of upsets the balance, this wonky weather and this wonky schedule. And wonky is a very technical word. So I'll tell you that right now. It's a technical word in the horticulture world. So plants generally bloom the same time of the year every year. Perennials bloom for shorter periods of time than annuals. Annuals are good to have in the garden, just a few. I usually just grow, just a few. And that is to make up for those lulls in the bloom pattern of my perennial garden. Different species bloom at different times of the season, so this makes a really good pollinator garden. To make a really fabulous pollinator garden, you should have a minimum of 3 spring blooming species of natives, 3 summer, and 3 fall blooming species of natives. So at minimum, for a good pollinator garden or a good start of a pollinator garden, you need 9 different types of plants. So that's kind of a tip there. Flowers on the same plant will bloom sequentially. So this is a very, very important fact to understand. Whatever is the first flower to bloom on a plant, whether it be at the top of the plant or down towards the bottom of the plant, that is going to be the first seed pod that is going to form and ripen. So once you start to learn that and notice that in your plants, things will really click in your mind about how plants work and the different plants from different plant families that do this. And like plant families will all do it sort of the same. Like milkweed, they all sort of do it the same. I'll explain about that in a minute because I have a photo to show you. And then plants either bloom from the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top. So that's another important one to remember. So let's take Cosmos sulphureus. This is Cosmos diablo. I'm not 100% sure it's the sulphureus species, but it's Cosmos diablo for other fact, it's just Cosmos diablo. Anyway, sorry. So what we're going to talk about here is over on the left, we have a newly formed flower bud, and then a flower bud that is about to open right next to it to the right. In the center of this photo is the flower that is fully opened, fully formed, and then the pollinated flower next to it. It's pollinated because it's closed up and the anthers in the center are starting to dry out. Then the anthers are the kind of furry looking stuff up at the top. When those anthers are dried off, then the seeds start to mature inside the calyx, inside the casing of the flower. And you can see that they're kind of green in that next to last position where it says immature seed head. And then once those seeds start to turn black and the seed head starts to slowly open and expand, that's when the mature seed head is ready to collect. So at any of these points in this sequence, you cannot collect anything except the last one. The last one is the only one that you will get a new plant from, even the immature seed head. This is where the mistake that a lot of new gardeners or new seed collectors start to have problems with is that they don't know when the seeds are ripe, or they collect them just a little too soon. And I used to do that. This is all about experience. When I was learning how to collect seeds, honestly, there weren't any websites out there. There was no books, no literature that I could ever find. And there was no lectures about this either. It was really a lot of trial and error for me in learning from other people who grow natives. So let's go over a few plants here in a little bit more detail. So this is common milkweed up on the top row. And so if we look on the left side, this is too soon. We're not going to collect green pods. That's like what we have outside right now. But you are going to wait until those pods start to dry out and burst open a little bit, and then you can collect them. Now you can collect them somewhere in between those two, too soon and just right, as long as you can pop open a pod and see if the seeds are dark brown. If the seeds are dark brown, they can be collected. That means they're ripe. And then if your seed pods have all burst open, like in the last picture, then it's too late. You're not going to get as many seeds as you maybe have needed. So keep that in mind with the milkweed. And then with asters, too soon, one of the most important things to learn about like asters and the black-eyed Susan right below it is not to collect the flower heads as soon as the petals droop, because that's too soon, way, way too soon. So the next picture of the aster is just right. So what you see, the fuzziness on that seed head is called a pappus, and the pappus has a seed attached to the base of it, and the seed is down inside the seed head. And so when that dries out enough and the wind starts to blow, then we are in the situation of the last picture where it says too late, and the seeds have all blown away, and the pappus helps them float, just like in the top picture where you see the common milkweed in the right hand picture, where they look like they kind of have a little bit of fluff on them. That fluff helps them float around in the wind and travel. And the same thing for the asters, and all of the asters are the same. For black-eyed Susan, you do not want to collect right after the petals. Again, right after the petals droop, you have to wait for them to dry out and for the flower stem to dry out. So sometimes if you're looking at a plant and you go, oh, I don't know if these seeds are ready or not, look at the stem right below that flower head. If the stem right below the flower head is starting to dry out, turn color, turn brown, turn gray, then it most likely is ready to go. You can see in the center of the black-eyed Susan row where the seed head is black, so it has all the chaff in it and the seed. And then in the next picture where it says too late, the chaff has gone and the seeds are gone because the birds have come in and eaten all of them. So it's kind of important to get to know those kind of things, like how do they look when the seeds are there and when they're not. And the way the black-eyed Susan looks is pretty much how all black-eyed Susans are going to look. And then cone flowers will be very, very similar to this because they're all in the same plant family. Down below is the golden Alexander. Golden Alexander is a very, very special native plant because it is one of the native plants that's in the carrot family. So therefore it is a host to the black swallowtail butterfly. So if you don't want to grow carrots, parsley, dill, or bronze fennel, you can grow a native plant that they can lay their eggs on, and that's golden Alexander. And you can see that the flower head looks a lot like parsley and dill flower heads, or even fennel. Too soon is when the seeds are green, just right is when the seeds are dark brown, and too late is when the seeds have already fallen off that umbel-shaped flower. So starting to get your eyes trained to these kinds of things is these changes in your plants at home. Getting used to this is going to help you really form some muscle memory after several years of gathering seeds. Okay, so let's talk about coneflowers and other plants in the coneflower family, the aster family. The coneflower is in the center of this picture. It's the one with the pink flower. The interesting thing about plants in the aster family is that they are many flowers that are all collected together on this receptacle, which is the bottom of the flower. And it's not just one flower. It is called a composite flower. In fact, the plant family used to be Compositaceae, but now it's Asteraceae. And it was called Compositaceae because it was a composite. It was a collection of many flowers, and in the case of very, very large sunflowers, several hundred flowers. And so what happens is that a ring of those flowers blooms every day. So the yellow ring on the purple coneflower and the yellow ring on the zinnia down in the bottom right, those are today's flowers in that picture. Tomorrow, the ring will move up in position towards the center, just like the zinnia has done. If you look at that zinnia flower, you can see that it has raised itself up in a cone, just like the purple coneflower does. Purple coneflowers, they start out flat, but then their cone raises and grows as the seeds grow inside, it expands. And the zinnia has done the same thing. And so the round circle of yellow flowers is today's flowers, and then the next row will be the ones on the inside going towards the center. Now, I have never seen a zinnia go completely all the way to the center. I've seen coneflowers go all the way to the center, bloom all the way to the center, that yellow ring. But for some reason, zinnias don't always make it. But it could be that I just miss it too. So that's how they flower. So this is Blazing Star, Liatris spicata. They bloom from the top to the bottom. So the flower on the left-hand side is just about a quarter of the way through its bloom process. So that means the seeds on the top at the very tip of the stem in the right-hand side picture are the very, very first flowers. Now, for Liatris to have very mature, very ripe seeds, they have to be black or dark gray. So that means if you look at this picture, that means that the seeds that are towards the center of the picture and down towards the bottom, those are the ones that are the most ripe. Those are the ones that you will be able to grow new plants from. The ones at the top, if you notice, they're kind of light gray. Some of them are white. That means that those seeds didn't form. Possibly what happened was that when that flower was blooming at the right time, there was no pollinators out to pollinate those. But the pollinators came along later to pollinate the bottom and the middle flowers. So sometimes that happens. And with Liatris, you really have to wait until, as long as humanly possible, those seeds have to stay on that stem in order to ripen. So you don't collect Liatris seeds in July or August. You're going to wait until September and sometimes October, depending on the species. This is a different species of Liatris called Liatris scariosa variety newlandii. It's northern blazing star, or also called Savannah blazing star. So this one is a little bit later blooming. It's blooming right now in the garden, whereas the previous one blooms sort of in late June into July. With Liatris, there's a whole bunch of them that are native to this area, especially northern Illinois, to the Great Plains, tall grass prairie, short grass prairie. And if you have a whole bunch of them in your garden, then you can have a really, really long period of Liatris blooming instead of just like 2 weeks. So think about that when you're thinking about putting native plants in your garden. It's kind of fun. I have about 4 different species of Liatris in my garden. It's really nice to have them almost all season long because butterflies and bees love these things. So you can see right in the center of the picture on the right that these seeds that I collected right around the week of Thanksgiving are perfectly ripe. The seeds are black. The pappus on the back of the seeds are perfectly brown. For some reason, some of these dried out with the lavender flowers still stuck inside, but that could have just been part of our weather conditions. Senna hebecarpa. This is wild senna. This is a native plant to Illinois and to parts of Indiana. This plant is in the Fabaceae family, so it's in the bean family, legume family. So if you're looking for a nitrogen fixer for permaculture, this is a really great plant to have in a permaculture garden. So it has these yellow flowers towards August and the end of July, and then the seed pods are long and they're very, very flat and skinny, and then you collect them in the beginning of October or the end of September. This is one of my favorite native plants. This is Ruellia humilis, or wild petunia. And I really love this plant because it takes up lots of space in a garden where you need little nooks of open space taken up. And this plant will do that, will serve that purpose. One of the interesting things about this plant is that the seed pod is in the center picture down at the bottom. And when that seed pod dries out to a certain point, a certain percentage of dryness, then the seed pod pops open and the seeds are ejected. And so I had a problem when I was first collecting this plant, like, God, how long have I collected this plant? 10 years, 12 years, that I would bring a paper bag of these into my office, and after about a week, they would start erupting and they would ricochet all over the walls of my office. And my secretary thought there was a little teeny tiny gun going off in my office or something. You know, she was just playing around. She was trying to be funny. And what it was, though, was these seeds that were erupting out of the bag and they were ricocheting off my walls. So when I moved out of that office, there was actually a lot of them down by the edges of my walls, in between my carpet and my wall. So what I devised last year was to use one of my habitats for my butterflies when I was done with it, cleaned it out, put the stems in there, let them erupt all they wanted in that enclosed space. It's nice and airy, the air can get through it. One of the most important things about collecting seeds and cleaning seeds is drying seeds, and we'll go over that in a little bit. And I'll go over that one again. This is Cephalanthus occidentalis buttonbush. This is a really, really great bee plant for your yard. It is an actual bush, grows about 8 feet tall. You can control the size with pruning, and you can see the flower up here in the top left. Down in the bottom left is the seed head, and all you have to do for the seed head when it's perfectly dry after a couple of weeks in a little bowl is just crush it. And that's all I did, was just twist my fingers, and it all fell apart, and each one of those little segments that are yellow with the black tip is a seed. So which seed head are you going to collect off of your plant? If you're talking about things like zinnias and, what else? Cosmos, pretty much any kind of annual that you're going to collect a seed off of, you're going to try and find the most healthy plant and the biggest, most healthy flower on there. Now, if I'm looking at these zinnia pictures in this photograph, which is a photograph I took at my house about 4 days ago, I will not be collecting seeds from that zinnia in the center, because something has gone wrong with that flower in the center, and it is starting to die from the center out. So what I did after I took this photo was I took that flower off and I discarded it, because it doesn't seem like a healthy flower for some reason. I have no idea why, but I took it off because I don't think I would have gotten healthy seeds off of it. But any of the other flowers in this flower pot would make a good candidate to collect seeds from. So make sure that you choose your flowers, note it in your head, maybe put a piece of string or a twist tie or something around the base of it so that you don't accidentally deadhead it too early. You can deadhead zinnias to keep them flowering, but make sure you keep the one big or the two big healthy flowers on the plant long enough so that you can collect the seeds from it. They should ripen on the plant. And you have to really keep an eye on it, because if you miss the seeds ripening, then the yellow finches will come and eat them, which is what has happened to me this year. So another way of knowing when seeds are ready is knowing when seed pods can be picked early. And as you can see in this photograph, these are common milkweed seed pods, and they're green. They're not brown, they're not yellow, they're not dry. They were green, but these seeds are ripe, and all they need to do is dry out, get their moisture content down a little bit, and then they will be able to be, sown whatever method that you want to sow them in. So this is one of those rare seeds where they can be collected slightly early, but you have to pop open a couple of pods and make sure that the seeds are actually ready to go. And there's one other annual that I know that you can collect that's pretty, that you can collect the seeds a little bit early. Zinnias sometimes, when they're close, when they're really, really close, but you really try to let those seed heads ripen as long as humanly possible. And the only reason I got in the habit of collecting seeds a little early for the common milkweed is because I needed to cut down my common milkweed at my old job for the fall cleanup, and sometimes that happened pretty early in the season, so I had to be able to collect those seeds right at the end of their ripening period and before the seed pods dried. So another thing about knowing when seeds are ready is that seeds need to be collected at the right time for maximum viability. So there's very few exceptions of the early collection, like I was talking about with the common milkweed. You can't really do that with the other milkweeds, by the way. Common milkweed is the only one that I know of that you can pick before they're totally dry and popping open. Learn the cues to take it. Takes practice. It took me a long time to learn these cues and things like that. And like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of resources except word of mouth of other people who are growing native plants, who are pretty generous with their information. Seeds are ripe when they turn brown from green or white. There is a couple of exceptions for that. A lot of seeds are kind of a brown color, dark brown, dark gray, dark green. There are a couple of seeds that are white though, so it's important to know that. Your plant's going to tell you when your seeds are ready. And one of those clues again is the stem below the seed head turning color and drying out. That is a really, really good clue. And then it's best to leave those seed pods on a little bit longer if you can wait a little bit longer, but not so long that the finches are going to get your seeds, because then it'll all be for naught if that happens. And then you can also use a sleeve to protect your seed heads, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. So when are zinnias ready? Zinnias are pretty much ready when the flowers are about to shatter. And that's what this is right here. This is a really nice dried out flower, and the seeds are all mature. They are dark gray color if you look really closely. Yeah, kind of a dark gray color. And so for whatever reason, and probably because the bird netting, the birds did not get to this flower head. So that's another plus for having bird netting, except you don't want to come out and find a bird caught in your bird netting. So I'll talk about this. These are seed sleeves, blossom bags, organza bags, gift bags from bridal showers, baby showers. I'm sure some of you ladies out in the audience have seen these before. You can buy them at the dollar store. You can buy them off of Amazon. I usually buy them by the 100 pack on Amazon for 10, 12, 15 bucks. They come in a lot of different sizes, and I have a lot of different sizes. They come from like 2-inch by 3-inch up to like 5 by 7. So if you have a few of each of those sizes, if you have a really big variety of flowers, then you'll have enough to, fit your needs for whatever you need. Another way that you can ensure that your milkweed seeds don't get blown away, don't get popped and blown away when you're away, sometimes like away from your house, is you just use a rubber band over it. And the blossom bags work really good too. So again, here's a close-up of those rubber bands around those pods. And these are the common milkweed flower stems that these were on at my house. So that was from a few years ago. So that was Asclepias syriaca, common milkweed. This is Asclepias tuberosa, butterfly weed. So butterfly weed, these pods are just getting mature right now. Mid-September is a really great time to start looking at them and seeing. When I went out to go look at mine, I think I had maybe about 50 or 60 pods in my front yard. And the photograph is on the left is from yesterday when I went outside, and I collected almost all of these, except for the one in the very center that is kind of still a spring green color. So if a milkweed pod is not ready to go, you will not be able to open the pod up. So on common milkweed, you can open the pod up, and if your seeds aren't ready, you can kind of put it back together, and the sap will glue itself back together. That doesn't happen with butterfly weed. If you cannot force that pod open to check the seeds are not ready. But the seed pods in this photograph that are kind of a yellow color and almost have like a little blush on them, then that's dry enough that you could pop it open, and the seeds were dark yesterday. So I collected all the ones that were not green. So I think I may have left like 5 or 6 out there, and hopefully I'll get them before they pop. Next, we have hollyhock. It's not a native plant, but it is a good pollinator plant, and it is a host plant for the painted lady butterfly. So the way that you know that this seed head is ready is when the seed pods turn kind of a brown papery color, and then you don't have to wait for them to burst open. You can just collect them when they're dry and papery, but they kind of have to be that brown color. And then these guys almost always have hollyhock weevil in them. So I always suggest that you take the seed pods, put them all into a paper bag or some kind of container, throw them into your freezer for a few days, kill those weevils, and then get on with your seed cleaning after that and drying. This one is one of my favorite native plants. This is Allium cernuum, the nodding wild onion. It's a really beautiful little plant. The flowers just kind of hang over like a little chandelier almost. The seed pods on the bottom right-hand side are from, that picture's from last week sometime. And the picture on the left, they're not open. The seeds are not black. But the picture on the left, the seeds are black. And the paper has peeled back from the seeds. So they're definitely ready to go. All you have to do with this guy is just cut off the seed heads, throw it in a bag, and wait for them to dry and fall off of the paper, basically. Sometimes I get impatient and I get in there and knock them off with my hands. Baptisia australis, this is false blue indigo. This is a really beautiful native plant. It's kind of a large plant. You'll know that the seed pods are ready when they turn black and they sound like a baby rattle. All you need to do is cut the stem off, throw it into a paper bag. They pop open later on and the seeds are inside the pods. Super easy. Knowing when columbine seeds are ready. The seeds are ready when the seed pods are green and kind of fat and they start to dry at the very, very tips, like in the picture in the top left. It is preferred to wait until the seed pods turn brown to collect the seeds. But last year, for some reason, my seeds dried out. My seed pods dried out before they turned brown. So that's why it's green. And I broke it open and there was ripe seeds inside. So whatever happened, I may have forgotten to water the plant or something, or we had some really hot days. If we had some days like up in the hundreds, then that would dry that out without changing the color, I think. And the seed pod in that picture with the white background is the pink columbine next to it. It's not a native columbine, but I grow this pink one and I grow the native one. So let's talk about seeds being white. Funny story, I had some volunteers go to a seed exchange and they asked me if I wanted to get anything because I couldn't go that day. And I said, hey, why don't you get me some fresh echinacea seeds? I'd like to start some new coneflower seeds. And they said, great. And so they brought me back 3 packages of these seeds. And I said, let's just see what's inside the seed packet because I had a feeling. I opened up the seed packet and the only thing that was in the seed packet were these long brown spikes, which are the chaff. That's it. That's all that was in the seed envelope. What was missing from the seed envelope were all of the white seeds, which in this photograph are down on the paper. So that person was not aware of the fact that echinacea seed pods or seed heads produce the white seed and the black chaff. And it is the black chaff that you have to discard, and the white seed is what you keep. It is worth looking on the internet, just putting in your plant name and looking for someplace like Prairie Moon Nursery, Prairie Nursery, or any other native plant nursery that shows you what the seeds look like. It is worth doing that, looking it up, saving a copy of that picture with the name on it, and starting a file on your computer so you have something to refer to, so that you have information on how the seed is supposed to look. And so that if you are sharing seeds, you're not sharing chaff and no seeds. That's kind of important. Another hint of knowing when seeds are ready or when plants are getting ready is to know how they bloom. So with something like Echinops retro, this is that globe thistle I'd mentioned before. The flower in the center of the picture is the flower that is blooming today. The flower heads on either side are the flower heads that are going to bloom the next week. The smaller flower heads on either side of those are the flower heads for 2 weeks from now. So this is a plant that blooms a really, really long time over the summer. And once all of the seed heads have stopped flowering and they're starting to dry out a little bit, then you can cover them with a blossom bag. Now, usually when I go back to look at saving the seeds from this plant, the only flowers that I'm going to put blossom bags on are the ones that are the largest flower heads, which are going to be the ones in the center, like this one flower in the center of this photo. That's the largest flower head. You can see where it comes from the stem of the plant, that it is the biggest, the first, the most dominant flower. It's going to have the biggest, fattest seeds, and then I just leave the rest of the seeds for the finches to clean up. This is Eutrochium maculatum, Joe Pyeweed. This is the one that grows in the sun. It's kind of a pinkish flower. It's this big, tall pink flower in the flower picture on the right. This is one of those native plants that you always want to make sure you deadhead. Don't ever let the seeds just fly around your yard. This is why I have the Joe Pyeweed in this certain place in my garden where I don't want it. It's a really hard plant to move around and to dig out. So you will know when these seeds are ready when they turn kind of fluffy, when they look a little bit like candy floss, cotton candy. Another way to know when seeds are ready with hibiscus, native hibiscus and non-native hibiscus. And then I'm talking about the hardy hibiscus, not the tropical ones. The tropical hibiscus generally do not make seeds, but hardy hibiscus do. So the way you know the seeds are ready on this one is simply that the seed pods are going to burst open. And again, this is going to get the hollyhock weevil, which, because these plants are in the same plant family, and so not all the seeds are going to be viable. Some of them are going to have weevils in them. So same deal, put them in the freezer just like your hollyhocks. How do you know when sunflower seeds are ready? Well, it's when the squirrels and the birds start eating them. So usually I collect sunflower seeds when I see that the top of the sunflower is starting to get picked at, just like in this picture, either by squirrels or by birds. Usually it's birds though. And then you can pick that sunflower. And the best way to dry a sunflower is actually hanging upside down in a really dry place like a garage, like a warm garage. And what you can do is you can wrap a paper bag over your seed head with the stem hanging out. So when you cut your sunflower head off, cut about a foot or so or longer of stem with it so you can hang it. But you can tie a paper bag around it to keep the seeds from falling onto the ground and getting eaten by mice. And I think I just had like a second of...
I believe there's 4 bumblebees.
This is me from a couple of years ago. This is a sunflower that I had at my house. And I was just so amazed at all the bumblebees on here. And when you look at this video, you can see that the center of the sunflower is green. And on the outside, it's all kind of furry looking. And it's because the outside flowers have already bloomed. And that ring of flowers is moving closer and closer and closer to the center. Just like we were talking about with coneflowers and with zinnias. They're in the same plant family. So they act the same. Another plant that is in the same family as coneflowers and sunflowers. This is Verononia fasciculata. This is common ironweed. And common ironweed, just like asters, gets a little furry apparatus on the back side of the seed, and it's called the pappus, and the pappus helps it travel. And so on Verononia, it's very easy. Once that pappus is kind of a brown or coppery color, you can cut the flower head off and you can throw that into a seed bag, paper bag or whatever, and let it dry out because they're ready to go. They should be dark brown little spear-shaped seeds. I'm not sure why I have this guy in here second time. I think mostly just to remind you that these have to be confined when you're drying the seeds, and to show you that the seed heads, there's usually 4 of them around each node on the stem, and this on the right hand side picture is what is inside the green circle on the left hand side picture. So I hope that makes sense. So there's going to be 4 seeds per node up and down the stem, and the bottom ones are going to be the ones that are going to ripen first because this plant blooms from bottom to top. And as it blooms, it grows longer and longer, the stem. So the flower is the first flower is going to bloom in this position. It's going to start making a seed head, but the stem is going to continue to grow and make another node. And then it's going to flower up here in a couple of weeks. And then the stem is going to elongate and grow to another node and have another set. So you can have a stem that's like 2.5 feet long, and it's going to have 5 nodes on it. Each one of those nodes will have 4 seeds. I don't know if this is useless information in my life, but for me, it's fascinating. All right, again, asters. The way that you know that an aster flower has been pollinated is that the center of the flower kind of turns a dark color. So if you look at the left-hand picture, the flowers with the yellow center are today's flowers. And those flowers have not been pollinated yet. The flowers that have the orange or the dark purple, dark red centers, those flowers have been pollinated. They're yesterday's flowers. And in 6 or 7 weeks, they are going to look like the right-hand side picture, where the seed is going to have a pappus attached to it, and they are going to be ready to blow away very, very soon. So with asters, you cannot pick all the seeds from one plant in one day. That's impossible because they bloom over a really long period of time. They start blooming. The earliest I've ever seen is like the last week of August, like Labor Day weekend, and they will bloom all the way through October as long as the weather is generally sunny. So you have to just collect them slowly. Pay attention, watch them. Another one that is, this one's really easy to grow. This is Verbena hastata, blue vervain, very tall plant, 4 to 5, 6 feet. 6 feet if it's got good moisture. These pictures are the exact same plant growing right next to my deck, which is why I got like eye level with it. And so it's in flower on the left-hand side, and this is about 6 or 7 weeks later on the right-hand side, and that seed head is nearly ready to go. When you look at it down from the top, you can see when the tiny little seed capsules are opened, and then when they start to open, the seeds are ready inside. You can put the whole thing into a paper bag, just let it dry. Shake them out. All right, so collecting. We know we've talked a little bit about collecting already. Just a couple more points about collecting, we'll move on. So don't collect as soon as the petals fall. Probably most important thing about collecting seeds. Don't be in too much of a hurry. I know it takes a lot of patience to collect seeds, and this might be the thing in your life that could teach you some patience, because it just does. It takes a little while to learn this stuff and to have patience for it. Seeds can take 2 to 8 weeks to develop and ripen. So again, patience and observation. Seed pods should be plump and not flat, depending on what they're supposed to look like. But in general, a seed pod is going to it's going to feel full. It's going to feel like there's something in there. Just like an individual seed should feel full. It shouldn't be flat. It shouldn't be flexible. A seed should be hard in general. It should be a mature color. It should be plump. Fleshy seed pods like milkweed should be dried on a table or a tray for 3 to 4 weeks. There's a couple of other ways to do it too. I'm going to show you. Seeds need good airflow to dry properly and to not get moldy. On milkweeds and a couple of other plants, if your seed pods get moldy, then your seeds are no good. Wait for cues from nature to collect things like sunflowers. So look for the birds. Wait for the birds for the sunflowers. You can collect your seeds into things like small paper bags, big paper bags, or you can collect them into things like a canvas pouch. I just learned that a couple of days ago. It's kind of a neat way to do it, but the seed heads have to be dry when they go in. Excuse me, girl. But I think paper is probably best. For me, paper works best. So when you go out to the garden to collect your plants, make sure that you have everything that you need with you. Bring out paper bags with you. I collect paper bags from everywhere. People bring me paper bags. I feel like the recycling lady, because people bring me paper bags all the time. People bring me seeds. They bring me seed pods. They bring me containers for my plants. They bring me, it's ridiculous. They bring me trays. They bring me containers for my seeds. I feel like a recycling lady. But I do reuse everything, or I share with other people who need the supplies that I get. So it's kind of fun. But when you go outside, make sure that you have some paper bags with you saved up. They can just be simple, like a package of lunch bags from the grocery store. Pruners and scissors, because there are going to be some plants that you're going to cut that a pruner is going to be better. A pair of scissors is going to be better. Markers to label your bags. You should label everything. As soon as you put seeds into a bag, you should write what that is and maybe where you got it from and the year that you gathered it. Oh God. And then you should wear gloves, because there's a few seeds out there that need gloves when you gather them. All right. Paper bags are really good because they allow for air circulation for drying. It's kind of nice. Don't fill to the top with really fleshy pods like common milkweed and like Asclepias tuberosa, the butterfly weed, because they will get moldy. It's kind of gross. So only fill those bags up, or you can fill to the top or whatever, but when you get home, then split them into 2 or 3 bags so it's lower, or put them on a tray. I can't put anything on a tray in my house, obviously, because I have creatures that will go into those trays and make a big mess. So paper bags are how I do it. And then I have one other method too. I'm going to show you. Allow your seeds to grow or to dry for a minimum of 2 weeks, and then for as long as it takes for you to get around to cleaning them. And then a small mesh hamper will work for things like milkweed too. I'm going to show you a picture of that in a second. So when you are out collecting, wherever you're going to go, a few things that you need to know. First of all, you need permission to collect seeds if you're going to collect off your own property. If you're going to go to your neighbor's house, if you are going to go to another person's private property, it's really, really important to have permission before you go. This is not an ask for forgiveness thing. If you collect seeds off of a public city park, county park, state park, or national forest or national park, then you could look at big fines depending on what you collect. So please, please, please avoid that. Don't do that. If you see a plant in a public park or a state park or something that you really like, take photos of it, take photos of the seed pod, and go seek out the seeds somewhere else. Don't just start stealing seeds from nature, because nature needs those seeds to not only to renew those plants and renew that colony of plants. This is the only way that we have plants that continuously grow out in nature, is that they renew themselves periodically by the seeds falling. But those seeds are really important for wildlife over the winter. So you might think taking one seed pod is nothing, but what if the next 10 people after you did the same thing? Then that plant might disappear from that area. So be really, really wise about this. Just buy the seeds for that thing that you want in the public parks. And when you do collect from your own garden or from someone else's property that you have permission for, take no more than 10%. It's very important to leave some so the plants can renew themselves. Another thing about cutting seed heads, make sure that you look really closely to find out whether or not the seed heads are ripe. Sometimes if you just tap that seed head a little bit into your hand to see if the ripe seeds are coming out, that's a way to figure out if they're ready to go. So look closely before you cut. Your seeds should be ripe. Again, you can split open the milkweed pods. It's pretty easy to do. And then typically the first ripe seed head is going to be from the first flower that opened on the lowest position or the highest center position of a flower. So this is where observation of how a plant flowers and what it looks like through the couple of weeks that it flowers is really important. Cut your seed pods off rather than tearing them. If you tear them, it could damage the plant. So this is one of those seed heads that's really important that you cut, because this plant has really small seeds. This is Anise hyssop. And if I just went in there and tried to tug at that center seed head and try and get it off the plant, I would rip it. But I would be pulling the plant towards myself. And then when I get that seed head off, and then the rest of the plant goes back to its standing position, it's going to snap back And where are all the seeds going to go? They're going to go down in the garden. So cut, don't tear, avoid the snapback because you will lose a lot of seed doing that. Now for Cosmos Diablo, this is our other sample plant here again. Collecting their seeds is can be a little tricky because the attachment is really weak between the seed and the seed head. So in the photograph on the left-hand side, I have put my fingers around the stem. This is from this afternoon. And then you close your hand around the seed head and then snap forward. Because if you don't close your hand around the seed, and for me, it's really important to get as much seed as possible because I need these seeds for stuff. But, you know, for you, if you're just a home gardener, it might not be so serious to get all the seeds. But for me, it's really important to get all the seeds. So if you don't close your hand quick enough or completely around that seed head, a couple of them are going to fall out the bottom of your hand. So it's important to get in there and pop that closed. That's slow motion that I'm doing this in. Usually I can do it a lot faster. But you do it in such a way that you have all of the seeds in your hand and not on the ground. Okay, let's talk about drying. Okay, drying. Basically, let your seeds dry for about 2 weeks. There's very few special things that you have to do with your drying. Seed stems upside down in a paper bag on your dining room table, in your garage, somewhere where they're not going to be disturbed. Once I get my seeds into paper bags and they're drying on my dining room table, then my cats kind of ignore them. But if they were in trays, they would not ignore them. 2 to 4 weeks is probably the minimum. Usually my seeds are hanging around until about January, from September and October. Drying, of course, can be done in bowls and trays if you are able to do that, but I like paper bags. Again, that Ruellia, where the seeds explode, this little butterfly habitat is really great. It's really fantastic. It worked out really well. And then for milkweed, for the big seed pods, you can see on the right-hand picture, this is the start of my common milkweed seed pods. I just got a few of them off because my lawn guys knocked down a stem yesterday. Luckily, the seeds were ready. So I can pile them about halfway, 3/4 of the way up on this thing and just shake it and kind of bounce it about once a week or so, because I'm going to be in my office all day anyway. So once a week or so, I'll bounce these guys around and get the center ones kind of moved around. And they dried absolutely beautifully last year. It was really, really nice. Now, this is Monarda punctata. This is, what's it called? I know it's Monarda punctata. I can't remember the common name. But I collected these seeds yesterday near my house. And I had to collect them a little early because the spot where I collected them might get mowed really soon. Sometimes it gets mowed in the fall. So I collected them a little bit early. I know the seeds are ready because I collected a test piece last week and I let it dry out in my car where it's nice and warm and dry, and it hasn't been hot. So I tapped those into my hand the other day and they were perfectly fine. So what I did here was collected these. It was the day after the rain out here, and so everything is really wet. So I put it in this like plastic colander thing that I have, and then I put it into a plastic tray, so if any seed falls, it gets captured by the little tray. But there's a jar in here to kind of take up some space so that air is flowing around it, and this doesn't turn into like a big solid mush ball of moldy stems. So these guys will be in here for about a week, and I'll try and stir them up every couple of days because they were so wet. I can't put them in a tray because my cat will eat them. I brought a piece of the plant in the other day when I came home with those, and he tried to eat it. So he's kind of dumb that way. All right, so cleaning seeds. So what do I mean by cleaning seeds? Cleaning seeds means separating the seed from the chaff. Think about that purple coneflower example where I said the chaff were these black spiky things and the seed was the little white nubby things. It's really important to collect them together and then separate them later after they dry, because the chaff can have mold on it, it can have a fungal disease on it, and we don't want to pass that on to the seed, so we separate them. Another thing is the function of chaff is that it protects the seed over the winter, but it kind of wears down throughout the winter and it lets the seed fall, and then the seed can germinate on the ground. But we are cleaning chaff because when you're sharing seeds, this is an etiquette thing. It's a respect thing. You don't want to just give an envelope with a bunch of stems in it to your friend, unless you have that kind of casual relationship as gardeners that you can do that. But if you're giving away your seeds at an event, or you're passing on seeds to somebody that's like a new friend or something like that, making sure that your seeds are pure live seed, no garbage and no wee seed in there, and no chaff inside the envelope is kind of a respect thing. So gardening etiquette, something that we need to think about a little bit. And I really think that cleaning the seeds is a very satisfying thing, at least for me. I can do it just kind of hanging out at home with my cats over the winter. I got nothing much else to do except housework, and who wants to do housework? So seed cleaning all of a sudden becomes very important to me in the wintertime. So how do you do this? So after about 2 weeks, for most seeds that have been in a paper bag upside down, after a couple of weeks, you can shake the seed heads out and the seeds will come out. You can pour the seeds from the paper bag into a bowl and then close that bag up again, shake, 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 pour out some more of the seeds from the bowl, and do that a couple of times. It'll probably take like 3 tries until you have gotten all the seeds out of the seed heads. And then usually I take those seed stems and I'll throw them in the garden, throw them in the compost, just put them out in the yard. As long as there's no powdery mildew on those stems, you can do that. You can recycle them that way. And then empty them into a bowl and then see if they need to be cleaned further from that point. So usually I will take whatever ends up in that bowl, put that into a little container, label it. Do not forget to label everything in every step, and then set it aside, because that's just the first cleaning. So separating them from the chaff is the first cleaning. A couple of special cleaning needs. You're going to need gloves if you go out and clean Eryngium yuccifolium, which is rattlesnake master, Echinacea purpurea. Those little chaff spikes are really sharp. The globe thistle, the round blue ball that I showed you, same. And then Tithonia rotundifolium, which is Mexican sunflower, same. That's this one down on the right. The points on the end of each piece of chaff on that flower are so sharp that they put holes in your hands when you go to clean them, if you're trying to break them apart. For globe thistle, all you have to do is squeeze the seed out of the seed head. Each round seed head is easy just to crumble and loosen. And then each one of these little bits in this bowl on the left-hand side, and the clear plastic bowl, is a flower with a seed in it. It's a dried flower with a seed in it. But because this is in the aster family and it's the thistle family, they're very itchy. So do this with gloves. So you can squeeze out that seed from each one of those little guys, and only take what you need, because who wants to clean a whole bunch that you don't need, because they are really itchy. I usually will wear gloves and wear long sleeves and then take a shower after I clean that seed, because it's that bad. This is how I clean milkweed seeds after a few weeks of drying. I will just grab the center of the seed pod that has the fluff on it, the floss. I will grab that out of the seed pod and then just use my thumb and just shuck the seeds off into a paper bag. They can further dry in that paper bag, or I can put them into a plastic container. Some seeds are really, really rough to get apart, and that's Rudbeckia and penstemon. This is penstemon in this photograph. These seed heads are like wood, and they do not soften up and pop open until spring. They need all winter to soften up. So they need all summer to harden up, and they need all winter to soften up so they can pop open and release their seed. So what I did was I just randomly found a picture of something like this board with the handle on it on the internet. And my husband made me one. And this is a zippered pillowcase on the left-hand side. I put the seed heads in there, and I just put it onto the pads of my dining room table and just press down on that board, and it crushes them. This is a little bit easier than using a mortar and pestle, but definitely a mortar and pestle will work. Now, a little bit more about cleaning seeds. After you have gone through the first stage of cleaning them from the chaff, you might end up with a bowl of seeds with a bunch of debris on top. And so using any number of these different shaped and sized sieves will help you either screen the debris out of your seeds or the seeds out of the debris. So if we go over to the next slide. Okay, I thought that was a video, sorry. So what this is me separating Agastache funiculum. This is Anise hyssop. And I have the some of the little seed heads, chaff, debris, leaves, dried leaves, little bits of stem are all in the top part of the sieve. And what I'm doing is I am shaking the seeds out of the debris. And you'll get about 90% of it out. And that's pretty much all you have to do. If you end up with a little bit of debris in with your seeds, that's okay. That's acceptable as far as etiquette goes. But the tops, if I was to give my friend an envelope with everything that's up in the top sieve, who knows if there's even seeds in there? So that's another thing. If you give your friends or give away seeds at an event or put seeds into a seed library, it should be just seeds and maybe just a little bit of debris in the bottom, like in the bottom in your seed packages, so people actually know what the seeds are, what they look like, because that's kind of a mystery to people. Anything that you have that has a little papery covering on it, these happen to be Spanish flag seeds, and I wish I had put a picture of the flowers in here because they're gorgeous. So look that up if you want. This is a beautiful hummingbird plant. It's an annual vine. And as far as I can tell, I think it's from South America, but hummingbirds absolutely love this as a food source, as a nectaring source. So all you have to do is make sure that you collect these little papery seed pods at the right time when they start drying out and the seeds are black inside, and you just kind of put them into a little tray and you just crush them and get that paper out of there. And then do a little winnowing from bowl to bowl, and they'll come out. This is kind of a fun plant. This is starflower. Starflower just falls apart. And the seed is this little thing that looks like a shuttlecock. The seed is the bottom, and the top is sort of like a pappus on the aster seeds. Helps them travel a little bit. But it's a flower that's come into the cut flower industry, and very interesting dried flower. So that's why it was grown. It was kind of cool. These are lupin perennis. This is the native lupin, and their seed heads are going, or their seed pods are going to look like a furry bean pod because they are in the legume family. They're in the bean family. And all you have to do is snap that seed pod off and just press it in on the seam, and they pop open, and then the seeds fall out. It's kind of cool. And zinnias are kind of a labor-intensive thing to get the seed and the chaff apart from each other and the debris apart from each other. It just takes time. There's no real quick way of cleaning zinnia seeds. But what the most important thing about zinnia seeds is determining viability. So these are on the right side in the red circle are the viable seeds out of this collection. They are thick. They have a ridge down the middle. They are the right color. They're dark gray. They look like an arrowhead. The seeds on the left side are white. They're not the right color for a mature seed for zinnia. They don't have a really sharp tip. They don't have that line down the center. And these were all very flexible. They were flat. They were flimsy. You could cut them with your thumbnail. So that way you know that that is not a viable seed. There's nothing in there. They should almost feel hard like wood. Separating chaff from seed in the really, really old-fashioned way, the oldest way possible, is winnowing. So you can do this for a lot of different seeds. Use 2 stainless steel bowls because then there's no static electricity and your seeds don't get stuck in the bowl. And go out on a slightly breezy day and just pour from bowl to bowl. And as you pour from bowl to bowl, back and forth a few times, the chaff is lighter than a seed and it's just going to blow away. So it's a really, really old-fashioned way to do this. I mean like 10,000 years back, 5,000 years back. This goes back into antiquity. This is how they cleaned seeds from the chaff. You can do the same thing with 2 plastic bowls if you are trying to clean seeds that are very dust-like from more dust and tiny debris. Using 2 plastic bowls creates static electricity. So you go from bowl to bowl, and what is left in the bowl after you pour, like in the top of this picture, that has no seeds in it, that is just debris and dust. You can just toss it away. You can just tap it into a trash can or wipe it out with a tissue or a towel or something, and then go back to pouring the seeds back and forth, back and forth. And every time you get a little bit of the debris collected in the top bowl, then you tap it out and then pour again, and then tap it out and pour again. So you keep going back and forth a few times and you'll get rid of all of the debris. Your end result should be clean, pure seed, no garbage. These are echinacea seeds. This is exactly what they're supposed to look like, with none of the big, long, spiky chaff in there. So if this is something, if you're going to present seeds to somebody, you want to, even if you are not going to see what their face looks like when they open that seed package, you want someone to feel really good about getting seeds from your seed library, buying seeds from you, getting seeds from your garden club, whatever the case may be. You want them to feel really confident about what they are opening up and what they're going to grow, that it's going to be the pure live seed and not garbage. So how do we store seeds? Storing seeds is pretty simple. A cool, dark spot is best. You can put them in plastic containers, glass containers. The little tiny plastic containers with the purple top over here is a nice one because they were just like a 2-ounce or 1-ounce size. Seed envelopes can just be kept into a box with them, and they just have to stay somewhere out of the sun, and then they can last for years. Vegetable seeds can be put into the refrigerator. They will last longer, but seeds should never be put into the freezer. Putting seeds into the freezer, that is the Svalbard seed vault job. That's their job. Long-term, decades-long seed storage in very, very, very cold conditions. There's a whole science behind it. Our regular freezers here in our refrigerators are not the proper place for a seed that we're going to take out in 6 weeks and grow. They should just be cool and dry. This is how I store my seeds. This is how I fantasized that I would store seeds for years. This was the reality for years. But now that I got my own office here at my house, this is my seed storage. This is how I store all of my seeds. I reuse other little containers, clean them out. If they're a clear plastic container, I try to remember to put a piece of black construction paper inside and then pour the seeds in. That way it keeps the light out. You have to keep light out of a seed container. Any kind of solid plastic seed container is a really good thing to put your seeds in. If you were going to use these little glass containers, I would again encourage you to put in a piece of black construction paper to keep the light out. But yeah, this is how my seeds were stored for years. It was really embarrassing, really a mess. And then how do I share seeds? Well, you can do lots of different things. You can make up your own seed packages with templates on the internet. Don't ask me for any links because it's really simple just to Google seed package template and you will get about 1,000 of them. And you just have to kind of sift through and see which ones you like. You can usually put them into a Word document, fill in your own information, print them out. I used to print them on scrap paper from work, which was a great way to use my old colored flyers from work from my old programs. And then you glue them up with paper glue. And then in the back here in the center of this photo, that's a a purchased #1 coin envelope. That's what most people are going to use when they are sharing seeds for a seed library or some other kind of situation. You can share them in small containers like prescription bottles that have the label taken off and are cleaned, so there's no residue in there. You can put the seeds in there. That's a nice airtight container for them. And then you can use small glass vials also. And if you're going to give those away as a gift, I would say probably dunk the top in wax so it's airtight until they're ready to open them and use them. So what are you going to do with all those seeds? That's a lot of seeds I got there. So what are you going to do? You can sow them outdoors. I'm going to do a little bit of that this year for the first time at a public park where I have permission to do it. You can winter sow. I'll explain that in a second. You can share with your friends. You can make seed bombs and become a guerrilla gardener, I suppose. You can go to a seed exchange. We're lucky here in Lake County, Indiana and Porter County, Indiana, that we have the Porter County Master Gardeners that put on a seed exchange and flower show every January, the last weekend of January. And this is their 18th year this coming year, at the end of January next year. And it started out as a seed exchange, which was a really, really fun event that just has expanded into this really beautiful flower show. So it's really great. So I bring tons and tons of seed packages to that. That's a good way for me to get rid of the last of my seed from the year before, because seed does last for a few years. Seed is not just 1 year. But what happens the more years that you keep seed, you will lose 10% germination every year. That's kind of the norm. So you can always look up how to do a seed germination test if you have some old seeds at your house. But for the most part, for native seeds, they can last for a really long time. Tomatoes and pepper seeds are the longest lasting vegetable seeds. And then the rest of them, and that can be 5 to 10 to 20 years. And then other vegetables will last, 2 to 3 years. Parsnips, 1 year. That's the one vegetable that I know that is a 1-year seed. Okay. If you're going to do some seed starting, there's 4 different methods that you can use, and we're just going to briefly go over these. You can direct sow in the garden, which I think is probably the lowest success rate, unless you're really practiced at it. Starting seeds indoors, you need a lot of equipment for that normally, if you're going to do like a lot. You can use a small greenhouse and be successful, or you can winter sow, which is the milk jug method. Most seeds need a period of cold to get them to germinate. This encourages them, it triggers them to germinate at the right time. So that's cold stratification. You can do it in your refrigerator, just like I did here. These are all native varieties that I cold stratified at work with just a little bit of clean sand from the pile at the golf course, a little bit of water, seeds, and you kind of just roll it all up together so the seeds are touching the sand. The date on these bags was the date into the refrigerator, and then the date that they should come out of the refrigerator about 4 to 5 weeks later. That helps you just not forget to take them out of the fridge. You can also put a reminder on your calendar so that you don't forget about them in the fridge. But this is winter sowing. This is my preferred way of starting seeds because I kind of have a small house, and it's a dark house, and it's a really dry house in the winter. So starting seeds indoors is just really not conducive to my conditions. Plus I have cats and they like to eat plants. So can't start seeds indoors. So when I found winter sowing, this was a miracle to me. And it's a whole method. I do have a lecture on that. Maybe I can do that for the library in January or February, and we can all get together again and talk more about this. So most seeds need a period of cold. This is how they get their period of cold. They are sown into a milk jug, and that milk jug goes outside. As soon as it is all put together, it goes outside. It stays outside. Sorry, that was my cat. The jugs stay outside all winter until they are ready to be transplanted. So the picture on the right is one of my jugs from a couple years ago. Those I think were an annual milkweed. So it has a really high germination rate, which is why I use this method. It's a really, really nice way to grow seeds. So don't wait too long for your seed collecting. Right now is the prime time to start getting out there. I think I've already collected about 6 different varieties, so don't wait too long.
Thank you very much, Dolly, and thank you all for doing this. And we will look forward to seeing you at another program soon. Thanks, good and good night.